Hello, 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 and welcome. In today's interview, I'm going to be talking about how to find your purpose in life with none other than the amazing Fatima Farmer of Soul Beauty Chat, which is a faith based community for self care, sisterhood, and authentically living on purpose. Now, just in case this is like your first time meeting me, I think it'd be quite rude and remiss of me to continue and not introduce myself. So, my name is Nina Dafe, and I am the founder and the editor of the Far Above Rubies collection.com, where I help amazing Christian women just like yourself to know their worth, their power, and their purpose as women of God. And that is so that they may speak up, step out, and shine as the amazing women of God that He created them to be. And if that's something that sounds right up your street, right up your alley, then I strongly suggest that you consider subscribing, okay? And you also want to stay tuned because by the end of this interview, you're going to know exactly how your tests are your testimonies. This is something that I've spoken about before, actually, solo. But in this instance, we're really talking about how your tests in life can be your biggest indicator of what your purpose is, okay? We're also going to be talking about why it's not necessary to have everything together before you actually start to pursue or walk in your purpose. And just in case you're not sure what your purpose is, you're still kind of going, God, reveal it to me. Fatima has some really great steps about how you can find your purpose and much more. I'm just going to say right now, this is a really great and meaty interview. So you definitely want to stay tuned, okay? But before I get into all of that, the main meat and potatoes of it all, I'm just going to do a very quick introduction to Fatima and then we'll jump straight into the interview. I promise. So, the Soul Beauty Chat is a faith based community for women who want to dig deeper into their God given purpose. Fatima Farmer helps women push past fears and execute their dreams through community, coaching, and faith infused resources. About 5 years ago, Fatima was depressed, broke, and almost homeless after quitting her job and her parents split. Over the course of a few years, she transformed her life from the inside out. After running from God for years, Fatima finally decided to stop doing things her way while she was sleeping on her sister's couch with no other options. Learning to trust God was the only way she could fill that void once and for all. Currently, Fatima works full-time at a career site called The Muse, helping millennials navigate their careers. When Fatima is not at her day job, you can find her speaking at empowerment events, hosting workshops, and creating group coaching programs for women who are struggling to find their God given purpose, just like she was a few years ago. And so, without any further ado, we're going to go straight into the interview. Enjoy! Hey Fatima, how you doing?
I'm doing so good. Thank you so much for having me on the show today. I'm so excited.
Oh no, I'm excited to have you. Honestly, I've been like watching your YouTube channel for like months now. So to actually be able to like speak to you face to face is like I've been kind of jittery all day. I'm not even gonna lie.
That's amazing. It's always so interesting when like people tell me that they've been watching for a long time, and then when I see that, especially if you're like commenting and active, like I feel like I know you already. It's like, oh hey girl, like what's up?
Honestly, I think that is what is like so great about like the internet and technology. The
Yes.
fact that we can be like across the pond and still just have this conversation and
Mhm.
build relationship is so amazing.
Absolutely.
But as you know, I've already kind of introduced you, but
Mhm.
just in your own words, if you could just let people know who you are and all the amazingness that you do, that would be
Oh, okay.
great.
So, my name is Fatima Farmer, and I'm the founder of the Soul Beauty Chat.
Mhm.
And the Soul Beauty Chat is a faith based community that centers around community, sisterhood, self care. And it's basically just helping young women, or all women, honestly, get closer to their God given purpose. So, we do that in an environment that is safe for Christians, safe for women who are on a faith journey and want to know
Mm.
God and also learn about and figure out what their purpose is and what they should be doing with their life.
Amazing. And how did you kind of, I guess, start on this journey? Like, and I get, and also in starting on this journey, how's your faith kind of filtered into it all as well?
Yeah. Oh, that's like, it's such a layered question.
I
So it's
know.
like, I can give you the short answer. I can give you the long answer. The long answer is definitely a story time. So if you're listening, grab some tea because it might be a long one.
Listen, I've got my water and stuff, right?
So for me, it honestly was not like this thing where it just like came together and I just woke up and I was like, that's it, the Soul Beauty Chat.
Right.
It was like a journey. It really was a journey. So I actually started out in the fashion and beauty industry. So I went to school for fashion merchandising, and like all throughout high school, like I was like, I want to be a fashion stylist. I want to be a fashion designer. Like I was like set. That's exactly what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
So I went to FIT and I studied fashion merchandising. And from there, I started to realize, okay, maybe I'll get into fashion styling because fashion designing felt a little too like, oh, I don't know if I can do that.
Right.
So I went into fashion styling and I got a lot of internships where I was like working at fashion shows and working for magazines. Like it was really awesome. It almost feels like a completely different life sometimes. But so I was doing that. And then I remember I was on set one day for a video shoot. And I had this like moment where it was actually my niece was being born that day. Oh, wow. And my mom was here, my sister was in the hospital, my brother was at the hospital, and I was at the shoot. And I was just like, in that moment, it clicked that like, this is not the lifestyle that you want. Right. Like I was like, yes, I'm good at this. I enjoy it sometimes, but I don't want a lifestyle where I'm missing special moments with my family because I'm on set for a video shoot. And in that moment, I was kind of like, I think it's time to like try something different. And I had already had a blog and a YouTube channel for a few years at that time. I had started my blog when I was in college. So I was really just kind of talking about what it was like to live in the city and do all these different fashion shows. And eventually I got to that point where I stopped doing styling and I was just focusing on like blogging. And in the meantime, I had a job at several jobs, actually. My first job was working in fashion as a merchandiser, visual merchandiser. And then after I left that job, I was working as an office manager. So I was just doing like office jobs basically. And on the side, I always had this little baby hobby thing, which was at the time called Sewing Stardom. And I was, thank you. And I was just kind of sharing my experiences. And it was interesting. At one point, my parents had split. And that was kind of like a pivotal moment for me because it left me in this weird spot as like the baby of the family. Like it was like, right, it's like you're home from school, you don't really have like a real job. You're just kind of like figuring it out. And then the parents are like, well, you know, we've done our part and we've decided we don't want to be together anymore. So what are you going to do? Like everyone's kind of like on their own now. So my mom was moving to another state, my dad was moving out, and I was kind of just like, well, where do I go type of thing. I didn't want to move to the South with my mom. I love the South, you know, that's where my family's from, but just no, it's just a no for me. So, you know, it's like, okay, I'm gonna have to figure something out. So I ended up couch surfing basically. I stayed with my sister for a while, and then and some floor surfing too. There were some floor mattresses. Like there was like, it was a rough period because I didn't have that sense of home. And I had also like just left my full-time job working as a visual merchandiser. So I was just in this weird space and I had no connection with God at the time. I was actually in a relationship and my boyfriend was very Christian, like grew up in a church. And he would always like talk to me about God and be like, you know, well, God wouldn't give you anything that you can't handle. And I'm just like, stop talking to me about this God. Like, I was like, I don't want to hear this. Like, I just was so disconnected from that I was like, I don't want to talk about that. I don't want to hear that. Like, just stop. So I went through a really tough time where I was like sleeping on floors, couches, and like just trying to figure it out. And then I finally got that office manager job that I mentioned earlier and got settled into my own place. And I was single at the time. So that was when I really was like, wow, it's just me. Like, you know, it's just me. I have all this time to myself. I'm kind of comfortable now with this job. So it's literally just me. And that was when I really like found God for myself. And that was when, and mind you, this whole time I still had my YouTube channel and my blog.
Right.
So I was sharing a lot of this. I started opening up and saying like, hey, I finally found a place after sleeping on couches and floors for like months. And people were like, well, wow, like, how did you do that? How did you find the place? How did you do this? How did you do that? So people would start sending me these emails, basically just saying like, wow, you've helped me so much just by sharing your story.
Wow.
And they would ask for advice. And it got to a point where it started getting a little overwhelming because it was like so many questions. And I'm like, dang, I really want to help everybody, but like, I can't do this, you know, with the job and with like responsibilities. So that for me was like that pivotal point where I was like, okay, how can I turn this into something where I can help more people and possibly get compensated for it. But initially it wasn't about compensation. It was just like, once I started doing my research, I was like, wow, there's people making money from doing this. Like, I was like, whoa, light bulb switch went on. And I was definitely on that spiritual journey for myself. So that's how I kind of like, I would say, incorporated the faith into it because I was on that journey, you know?
That makes a lot of sense. And even as you were, you know, speaking and sharing, it was interesting because I was thinking about like kind of my own story in terms of like how I kind of started my blog and doing these interviews and stuff like that. And I find it so amazing that a lot of the times, especially in our culture, we tend to kind of idolize finding purpose. We think it's going to be like, I don't know, this huge light bulb moment where everything changes and blah, blah, blah. But it really is just a journey. And actually, a lot of the times it's not glamorous. You know, for you, it was sleeping on couches and floors and it just being you. For me, it was, to be honest, like the breakdown of like a lot of my, what I called my foundational friendships, you know, the people who were like my day ones, you know, all of a sudden, you know, they weren't around anymore. And, you know, I come from a Nigerian background. So by the time I got to like 25 and stuff, it was the whole, well, when are you getting married? You know, all of that sort of stuff. And then trying to figure out, okay, people are saying, this is my life path. Should it be? You know, what should I be doing? I identify with you just because of that sense of aloneness. And when you're in that space, it's almost like you've got no choice but to kind of dive deeper into God because you don't have the answers. In fact, you've got no clue what to do. So you just got to lean in and just kind of surrender and let yourself be led, right?
And that was one of those things for me where I definitely idolized finding my purpose. Like I remember at like a young age being very engulfed in like passion and purpose and like like in self-development at, like as a teenager. Why, I have no idea, but clearly God was doing something before I could see it. But I just remember like idolizing it and having like, oh, I can't wait until I have this like moment and everything's so clear. And it was like, it wasn't pretty. It really wasn't fun actually. And but looking back at it in hindsight, I'm like, I can see that like your purpose is usually birthed out of a really tough period of time.
So true.
Like purpose doesn't come from when life is easy. It doesn't happen in those moments. It happens in those moments where you're stuck and you're confused and you're lost. And that's when it happens. And you usually don't even realize that it has happened until you get through it. And then you're like, oh, now this makes sense, you know?
Absolutely. And until you get through it, and I think other people start to ask you questions, well, how do you do this? And you're like, and for me, I think that moment when it first started happening to me, like with my blog and everything, I was like, oh, they think I'm an expert. Like, what's
like, what? You think I know the answer? I don't have the answer. No.
And I think that is just so God, right? That he would take you, like knowing that you don't have the answer and stuff like that. But that's when you get to kind of point upwards and go, hey, I don't know the answer, but this is what I went through and I know somebody who does, you know? Honestly. So how did you, I don't know, I mean, I know you said that people were asking you questions and things like that, but in terms of like career-wise and obviously being a coach, how did you kind of delve deeper also into, you know, purpose and helping others in that way as well?
Yeah, so once I had realized that it was like a need there, like people were asking me all these questions, I just started doing research. So I'm like looking at all these different like bloggers and like all of this different stuff. And I'm just like, okay, there has to be something to this. So
Sure.
I stumbled across like life coaching, and I was like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, this kind of sounds like what I could do.
Yes.
And I remember when I was much, much younger, I always wanted to study psychology and like be a therapist.
Mm-hmm.
So like when I started diving into that, I was like, oh, okay, this kind of sounds like a therapist a little bit, but like let me
Mm-hmm.
do a little more research and see what it actually is. So because I was feeling so stuck in that moment, I actually signed up for a session with someone who was a life coach.
Mm.
And I just talked to her about what I was feeling, what I was going through. And she said to me, like, you know, like you would probably make a really awesome life coach. And I was just like, what? Like, what do you mean? Like, I'm asking you for help, but you're telling me that I should do what you're
Yeah.
doing? How? How does this make sense? But that, like, her words never, like, really left me. Even though I didn't believe it at that moment, I was just like,
Mm.
okay, noted in the back of my mind.
Sure.
So I just continued on with working in beauty and doing the hair and the natural hair videos on YouTube and all that stuff. And then again, I hit that wall, same way I did it when I was in fashion. And I got to that point where I was just like, this isn't fulfilling me.
Right.
And I found myself getting caught up in like this chase of like numbers and growth and like trying to become like this like natural hair like blogger. And I was just like,
Sure.
this isn't what I want for myself, and it's not what God wants for me.
Mm.
So I had to get really clear, transparent about that. And then also like be honest with myself and the people that were watching. And that's what I did. Like throughout this whole process, I was like, hey guys, so you know, I know you subscribed because of that natural hair video, but that's not happening anymore here. Like we're not doing that ever again. And I was like, I actually want to talk about, you know, my relationship with God and what I'm doing to grow that relationship and all the other amazing things that I want to talk about. But just
Mm.
that aspect, I just no longer feel drawn to. And a lot of people were like, okay, you know, deuces, it's been real. And then a lot of people were like, you know what, this is actually really awesome and something that I feel like I've had God on my to-do list, and it can
Yes.
help me actually get to it. So for me, once I realized, like, okay, again, there was that need, right? I saw that there was a need there. So I just
Mm-hmm.
started sharing my experiences. And then from there, it turned into, okay, people were still asking me for help. So let me create this in a more structured way. So
Mm-hmm.
at first, it was just kind of like consulting. Like that's what I was
Mm-hmm.
calling it because I didn't feel comfortable with coaching. So I
Sure.
was like, okay, I'll just hop on the phone with people and talk to them for like 30 minutes or an hour about whatever they want to talk about and just help them with whatever they're going through.
Mm.
And it was very general stuff. It was like they wanted to know how I got my apartment. They wanted to know how I started my blog. And then
Mm.
I started creating like packages. So I was like, okay, let me make services for each of these things that I'm talking to people about.
Right.
But once I got really, really clear with my relationship with God and started spending more time with God, it became more clear to me of what my focus was. And my focus was no longer like helping people find a job or helping people find an apartment or start a blog. It was more so like helping them get that clarity on what their actual purpose is. Like
Mm.
I knew that my purpose now was to help people to find their purpose through
Yeah.
God and through speaking. I knew that
Yeah.
that was my gift, through speaking and through helping people build their relationship with God.
Mm.
And once I got clear on that, it was like, okay, I have to restructure this. I have to stop
Mm.
helping people with their blogs and stop helping people just find a job and really help them get to the core of what they're searching for. Like
Mm.
what you're searching for when you're looking for that job and you're starting that new shiny project is actually that fulfillment,
Yeah.
that God-driven satisfaction.
Mm.
And that only comes from first having a relationship with God, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, and because I had been on that journey, I felt like I was kind of like searching like for the formula, right? I kept saying like, well, how do I do this? How do I create this? How do I do this thing? And I remember hearing vividly God speaking to me and saying like, you are the formula.
I love that.
Like, stop looking for the how-to guide of
Yeah.
how to make this business a business. You know that I've told you that I want you to be an entrepreneur. You know that I've told you that I want you to help people and that I want you to give glory back to me.
Yes.
But it's going to be in a way that you've never seen before. And it was just like, I was like, okay, so I'm going to stop reading all these marketing blogs and
And
buying all
looking
these
at how
books,
they did
right?
it.
And signing up
Yeah.
on these courses. I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna chill. And I just
Yes.
rested in God's presence. I got silent, I got still, and
Mm.
then I got obedient. When I heard him give me an idea to start something, to do something, I did it. And that is kind of how like the Soul Beauty Chat came about. Because it started with me feeling God convicting me to let go of that beauty and the natural hair scene on my YouTube channel. And that then turned into this community, the Soul Beauty Chat. It then turned into the sisterhood where we can have these conversations about
Yes.
God and about faith and purpose. But had I not been obedient to that, had I just been like, no, I want to be a natural hair blogger. Like, I don't want to do this, God. And it's like, this community would not exist.
So
This
true.
business would not exist. And I wouldn't be able to make the impact that I'm making in women's lives. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, it was definitely like a journey and like a drawn out one where like now, like I can take a step back and be like, okay, this makes sense now,
There's so many layers to that as well. You talked about your relationship with God, you talked about obedience. I love the way also you talked about the fact that actually one thing led to the other. Because when I'm kind of mentoring and I speak to my mentees, I talk a lot about, a lot of the times we go through things, but they're the thing that leads to the thing. And actually it's when we have to start walking first before we can actually realize what the real thing is. You're never going to have it kind of all figured out straight away. Like you didn't, I certainly didn't, but it's as we take those steps that it all becomes clear. And so I just really want to encourage, especially if there's anyone listening right now who kind of feels like, oh my gosh, I need to have it all together, I need to know exactly what I'm doing and blah blah, but it doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. Just start the walk and it will become clear.
Yes. What's so interesting is like when that first woman that I spoke to had told me that she thought that I would make a great life coach. I felt that way. I was like, wow, like, so, she's telling me that she sees something in me, but I don't see it in myself.
Right.
So I almost ran from that. And I never quite felt comfortable with the title of a coach because I was like, I feel like I have to be an expert then.
Yes.
And I'm like, I'm not an expert in anything. You ever hear that phrase like, a master, a jack of all trades, master of none.
Yeah.
I've struggled with that so much because I'm like, I'm reading all these marketing blogs and I'm hearing like, in order to be a coach, you have to be an expert in this one thing. And that prevented me a lot from taking action. Like I was like, I'm not really going to do it. I'm just going to kind of like, downplay what I'm doing. And then once I spent that time with God and I got confirmation from God that this is something that I want you to do, I started to own that. I'm like, look, I may not have gotten a certification. I may not have went to school for psychology or for whatever, but I know that God has planted this desire in my heart. And for that alone, that is the confirmation and the validation that I need. And I stopped seeking it from other outside sources. I stopped saying, okay, maybe if I get this certification. I'm like, no, God didn't tell me to get a certification, so I'm not getting a certification. I'm going to do it God's way, And that's, no, it's okay. That alone has given me the confidence to do it. So like if anyone is struggling with that, like, well, I don't want to start because I'm not sure that I can do it or I'm not confident enough. If God planted that idea in you, just take the first step.
Yeah, it's so true because I had a very similar journey before I started mentoring. I had someone contact me and I almost sent her away. I almost kind of went, oh, maybe you could contact this person. And then it was almost like the Holy Spirit said to me, Nina, she's contacted you because she wants to speak to you. And, I remember speaking to like my really close friend, Michelle. She's just been such a blessing because she just, one of those people kind of will mentor and speak into your life as well. And I remember I said the same thing, okay, maybe I'll go and I'll do some kind of course or get a certification. And she kind of cussed me out in love, basically. It was just, she was like, you don't need that. If they're asked, when people are coming to you, they're not asking you what your degree was in. They're not asking whether you got a certification or whether or not you did a course. They know that what you have to offer is God sent and they want that. So
Yep.
you need to trust that gift that God
Yep.
has given you and give it. You're a solution
Absolutely.
to someone's problem, like you said.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's scary. That's
Yeah.
scary to do.
Yes.
But once you get that confirmation, it's like you feel it. It's like you
Yeah.
feel it in your soul, and you're just like, okay, I have to do this. Like,
Mm.
regardless what the outside looks like I have to do this now, you
Yeah.
know?
So true. And
Hmm.
so if there is kind of someone listening right now who's kind of in that place of, I don't know what my purpose is, I don't know what I'm called to do, how do I find it?
Hmm.
What would you say to them? Do you have any maybe steps that she could take at all?
Yeah. My first step, honestly, would be, even if you don't have a relationship with God, would
Mhm.
be to get still.
Yeah.
Because I promise you that if you start from a place of stillness and openness and wanting to hear from God,
Mm.
you will hear from Him. Even if you
That's
feel
right.
like, I haven't talked to God in so long, I don't know how to pray,
Yeah.
just get still. And simply all that means is eliminate distractions, whether that is you have to delete social media off your phone for a little while, tell your friends that you're staying in for the weekend, whatever those distractions are for you.
Mm.
Decide, like, on this weekend, I'm just gonna
Mm.
be quiet and still. Maybe I'm gonna journal, maybe I'm gonna go for a walk,
Yeah.
and do it with the intention of, God, I need your help to understand what I'm supposed to do. Start from that, please.
Mm.
And I think the second thing that I would suggest is to, I can't remember where I heard this from,
Mhm.
but the saying of follow your curiosity.
Mm.
Follow your curiosity. So, whatever those things are that you're curious about, you don't have to be good at them. You don't have to be an expert at them. You don't have to be skilled or licensed or anything.
Mm.
Just things that you are simply curious about. And they're like kind of always been in the back of your mind of like, well, I would kind of like to try that out, you know?
Mm.
Start with those things. Maybe write a list of those things out
Mhm.
and see how you feel about them when you're writing them down. Like if you're writing down maybe a hip hop dance instructor, when you write that down, like think about, why are you drawn to that? You
Mm.
know, why are you drawn to that? Are you drawn to that because you feel like that's the cool thing to do? Are you
Mhm.
drawn to it because you feel like that's something that you're naturally good at and you want to explore?
Mhm.
Um, really start by noting what your curiosities are and why you're attracted to them.
Mm.
Um, I remember when I initially had gotten started with coaching at one point, and I feel like I was hitting a wall a lot, was because I had kind of started idolizing the idea of being a coach.
Right.
I had started like idolizing, like, okay, if I'm a coach, I can like live this lifestyle that I've always dreamed of. And I felt like I started compromising the original plan that God had, you know?
Right.
Um, and I feel like that led me to accept clients that weren't necessarily clients that I was supposed to work with.
Right.
And I had to be really transparent with myself about that and be like, okay, why does this feel so resistant? Like if God told me to do this, why do I feel like I'm hitting a wall all of a sudden?
Mhm.
And it
Mhm.
was because I had kind of, when I had wrote down, oh, I can do this type of coaching, it was more so from a mindset of like, because this is going to give me freedom. This is going to give me X, Y, and Z, and not saying,
Sure.
but always thinking, but is this going to give God glory first?
Mm.
And I
Mhm.
feel like that's how I've like kind of now gotten into that sweet spot of like, I'm in my groove now. I know who my clients are. I know what kind of service I'm offering, because when I hit that wall, I questioned it. So I would encourage anyone that is seeking, once you decide on those things that you want to explore, question them. Why do you want to explore them? You know, is it
Mm.
something that you feel like God has placed in you, or is
Yeah.
it something that you think is just it's glamorized? It's like this
Mm.
cool new thing to do, so let me just try it. You know.
Yeah, yeah, that makes a lot of sense, especially the questioning,
Hmm.
because I think especially as young people, sometimes we actually end up following a certain route because hey, this is what our parents told us to do.
Yeah.
This is what I'm supposed to do as a woman, for
Right.
example, or whatever the case may be.
Yep.
So yeah, questioning everything. I think it's, how does the Bible put it again? Testing the spirit. And also
Hmm.
like the fruits as well,
Yep.
all of those sort of things where we're not just supposed to kind of go blindly through
Hmm.
life. We're supposed to have these conversations with ourselves and with God as well.
Yep.
Definitely. And the other thing as well that, you've mentioned a lot of as well is like, your blogging and,
Hmm.
tube and all of that sort of thing. Did they kind of go hand in hand? Because I know you mentioned that first they were just kind of like a little side project and
Mm-hmm.
things like that. What I guess inspired you to start these platforms? What's
Yeah.
yeah.
So I had always naturally been very into like beauty. I remember like as a young girl, like before we even had a computer in our house, we always had magazines. We always had like Essence magazine and
Yeah.
Ebony and Jet. So I
Mm-hmm.
always just had like, I was constantly get the magazine, cut out all the pictures, put them on my wall. Like I was always drawn to that
Yeah.
for some reason. So once we did get a computer in the house, it was like game changing. And I was immediately like, well, I want to share stuff. Like I want to share all the cool stuff that I'm finding in thrift stores and all the stuff I'm doing with my hair. So it genuinely just started as like, I just want to share what I know. Like
Mm.
I feel like I was always one of those people that everywhere I went, people would say like, how'd you get your hair like that? Or where'd you find those earrings? Like I
Right.
was constantly getting questions. So I was like, if I just put it all here, I don't have to answer the same question over and over
Okay.
again. I can just say, here's the link to how I got my hair like this.
Right.
So that was how it started. And then I'd probably say in like 2000 and maybe like 12 or 11 is when I got a little more intentional. And that's also around the time when I started my YouTube channel.
Right.
But that's when I got a little more intentional of like just making it into something bigger. Like I knew at that point, like this is going to be something bigger than just like a little hobby type of thing.
Mm.
And I had also been working with different brands and influencers. So I was starting to see like this emergence of like an influencer, like that
Yeah.
became like a job for a lot of people.
Mm.
And because I was exposed to it, I was like, well, maybe it's something here. So let me like explore that a little bit. Like, let me see if I can, maybe get a brand sponsorship or like, get this type of like build this audience around this different thing that I was building. But I probably say like maybe like 2015 or 14. Yeah, around that time is when I got more intentional around the faith portion. Is when it kind of shifted again from that like focusing on beauty and being like, I want to talk about what's underneath the beauty. I want to talk about the soul beauty. I want to talk about like those things that sometimes you're almost embarrassed to talk about, like dealing with depression and anxiety and stress and confusion about life and relationships. And like, and something that was really huge for me too, where I really, really got really transparent on my YouTube channel was like, when I got really serious about my walk with God, I struggled a lot to find people that look like me talking about the Bible.
Yes.
And like in a way that didn't feel like church. It's like I can go to church on Sunday and get church. I don't want to go on YouTube and then feel like I have to watch a 60-minute sermon to answer how to study the Bible.
Yeah.
Like I wanted quick answers to these questions that I had. And again, that's when I felt that tug from God saying like, stop looking for the answer and just be the answer. Like become the answer that you're looking for. So I started using my platform as like, how can I be a resource to that person that is exactly where I was like 2 or 3 years ago? That was like, well, how do I study the Bible? How do I hear from God? How do I know it's God? How do I know it's not the devil? Like, how do I know it's not myself? So I just wanted to make like practical, straightforward videos that can say like, if you're just starting out, these can help you with that very beginning stages of your relationship with God. And then from there, it was like I build more and more resources onto it. So like if someone would say if they're more of like an intermediate, like they have the foundation of having a relationship with God, but now they really want to know like what's my purpose and how do I walk in it? That's where like my one-on-one coaching comes in. That's where group coaching programs come in. That's where like my free resources and my workbooks, like those type of things can then help you with fulfilling your purpose. But I think it starts with that root of like just knowing God. Like that's the first part.
Absolutely. And normally when I kind of go to end interviews and stuff like that, I have these like quick fire questions that I always kind of ask. So the first one is, do you have like a favorite woman of the Bible, and if so, why?
So my favorite woman would probably be I'd probably say Martha. I think it's Martha or Mary. I know Martha and Mary were together when Jesus came. I might be mixing it up because I'm not a Bible scholar. But I believe it was Martha where Jesus came and they were so like overwhelmed with like preparing for him. Mary was like so overwhelmed with like preparing and was like, oh my God, like I have to get this ready, I have to get that ready, I have to get that ready. And the other sister was just like, I'm just gonna chill with Jesus. Like, I'm just gonna sit here at his feet. Like, he came in and she just sat. And then she gets so upset. She's like, aren't you gonna say something to her for just relaxing right now? Like, I'm over here cooking, cleaning, and she's just chilling. And he's like, he basically said, like, I'm not going to take that from her because she's choosing to sit at my feet right now. And it's like, that's what you should be doing. Like, it's like, I came here to share my knowledge with you, to pour into you, to love you. And sometimes it's just like, we get so consumed. Like, I feel like I love that story so much because it reminds me of that space where I was just like trying to do this, trying to figure it out, trying to make it happen. And it wasn't until I was just like, I'm going to stop reading the books. I'm going to stop feeling like I have to get validated from outside sources and I got to go to school and I got to do this to become this thing. I'm just going to chill with God. And once I did that, I realized that I had become this thing that I was trying to figure out. Like I had become this woman that I was trying to research. How do I become this woman? It's like maddening that we do it so often, but that would probably be my favorite. One of my favorites.
And if you had to finish the sentence, so I'm a Christian woman who is, what would you say?
I am a Christian woman who is loving, non-judgmental, and on fire for God's purpose.
Absolutely. I think what you said as well about being non-judgmental and just even like your videos and the way that you kind of put things across, I think that really just it comes across because exactly what you're saying about not necessarily being too churchified, just being able actually to talk about maybe the less glamorized things about faith and our walk with God, like when we're questioning, when we're in a dark space. And I think that's definitely something I really, really appreciate about you.
Thank you.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think for me, it's like, it's hard to do that sometimes, but every time when I do it, there's always that sometimes it's an overwhelming amount of people that were like, thank you so much for this. Because your pastor is not going to stand up on Sunday morning and tell you that on Saturday night he was doubting everything.
Yeah, it's true.
It's like, because we have to wear these masks sometimes as Christians. And I'm all about like taking that mask down and like almost normalizing conversations around Christianity and what it means to be a Christian. And like, you doubt sometimes. It's normal,
but actually those moments of doubts usually lead to the great amount of faith anyway. And if you had to finish the sentence, I'm a Christian woman who is not, what would you say?
I am a Christian woman who is not limited. And I say that because like before I really embodied being a Christian, I felt like I was letting go of so much stuff. And I know a lot of people probably feel that way. They're probably like, wow, like in order to be a Christian, you got to follow all these rules. Like, I'm not here for it. It's you really have so much freedom in God. You really do. When you really start to learn him and his ways, you have freedom to everything in this world. But having that, knowing that like I can make a choice. It's like I can have anything. I can be a part of all of this stuff if I wanted to, but I have the power to make a choice to follow God. That's so powerful. Like realizing that is so powerful. It's like you're actually not limited at all. Like
and he doesn't force himself upon us. Absolutely. And just before we go, do you have any other just encouragement for people? And also please let people know where they can find you. If you've got anything, any freebies maybe that they can have or anything like that, then definitely let me know as well.
So I guess as final words, I would say, especially to people who I'm feeling really drawn to like talk to people who don't really know God yet. or if you feel like you've just been distant from God and you're like, I don't really know where to start to rebuild this.
Yeah.
I just want to encourage you to seek God for yourself wholeheartedly. Let go of those ideas of what your parents may have believed in, what your pastor may have said in the past,
Yeah.
what your friends think about God, what social media says about God, and really make a vow to just seek God for yourself.
Yeah.
Without those different judgments and ideas in your mind. Like, try your hardest to like let that go and go in with just like an open, clean slate of like, okay, I'm really gonna give this thing a try. And I can guarantee that one decision will shift your entire life.
So true.
And I can only say that because I experienced it myself. Like, I was involved with so many other things, from Buddhism to being complete atheist, like completely against religion and Christianity. But had I not made that one decision to just say, I'm going to try this for myself, I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing. So I would encourage you to start there. As far as where you can find me, I'm available on social media. My website is SoulBeautyChat.com, and on social media, you can find me at Fatima_Farmer.
Love it. Fatima, thank you so much for having this chat today, and seriously, all the pearls of wisdom as usual. Like, honestly, such a pleasure, and one that I've really been looking forward to as well. So
thank you so much. One thing I just realized I forgot, if anyone is interested in like a freebie, or especially if you feel stuck of like how to find your purpose or where to get started, on my website you can sign up for a 7-day prayer journaling challenge, and that's a great way to either start or rebuild a relationship with God. And again, it's www.soulbeautychat.com.
Brilliant. Thank you so much.
Of course. You're so welcome.
Bye.
Bye.
How amazing was that interview? I mean, if you were just as blown away as I was by all of Fatima's pearls of wisdom, then definitely feel free to like. And also, as I say all the time, freely you have received, so freely you should give. So if there's anybody who you can think of that needs to hear the same nuggets and pearls that you just did, then definitely feel free to share it with them. I'd also love to know what your biggest takeaways were, like what gave you the biggest kind of aha moment. And so I would love it if you would also just write those down in the comments below. As you guys know, I'm extremely interactive, so you know, we can continue this discussion and having a back and forth. And also, if you loved this video and would love to see more, basically encouragement to live your best life as the amazing woman of God that He has called you to be, then definitely also consider subscribing. And don't just hit the subscribe button, but hit the little bell below as well, because what that will do is notify you every single time that I upload a new video, which is at least once or twice a week. Okay, and so with that, my lovely ladies, I'm gonna say goodbye. Enjoy the rest of your day and take care until next time. Okay, bye.